Coming up now on an all-new Animal Outtakes, a turtle release that will touch your heart. We meet the official swamp girl in Central Florida and learn more about her efforts to save injured reptiles. Plus, we're visiting what's being called a Noah's Ark for coral, where biologists are working on genetics to help sustain a coral reef in crisis. And later in the show, we meet adorable Dash. This two-toed sloth may not be fast on his feet, but he is quick to make you feel all the feels. This and much more straight ahead on Animal Outtakes. A Florida-born woman is using her passion for reptiles to help save the lives of animals that many are afraid of. From snakes to alligators, Swamp Girl has traveled thousands of miles back and forth across Florida, rescuing and rehabilitating reptiles in need. We followed along on a recent baby turtle release and learned more about the dedication of this nonprofit.
This is Shingle Creek, and Shingle Creek is actually the headwaters to the Everglades, so it travels all the way south to the Everglades, making it a very important waterway, especially when it comes to whatever happens up here travels down there when it comes to pollution and all of that too. So very important area. It's definitely a piece in history. My name is Kim Titterington. I'm also known as Swamp Girl. And I am a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. I'm also a researcher and the founder and director of the organization as well. So I play many roles. We have some little striped mud turtles here on top, and they are ready to go. They're so tiny. Now, it's hard to believe. They're only like the size of like a bean. They have grown a little since they hatched, believe it or not. But the parents are very small in the first place. So like mom is probably only like this big as an adult, maybe like between 4 and 6 inches at the max. And so those small little turtles produce even smaller baby turtles. So they're just like little bean size. I can put one on my finger to kind of show the size here.
So where did they come from?
They are native to Florida, and they basically, I got these guys because the mom was struck by a car, and then one of the other mothers was actually chewed on by a dog. There's not much help out there for reptiles, and they're probably one of the most misunderstood animals we have in the world, let alone in Florida alone. So I feel like I kind of took that on as, you know, there's not too many people who are willing to learn what is necessary to help these animals. They are far different from, say, a bird, a cat, a dog, or a squirrel. So, you know, that knowledge is very specialized, and I noticed there was a huge lacking in it, and so it just kind of became my thing. I just wanted to do more for the reptiles and be that person for them. They are really important because they actually spend a lot of time, as their name suggests, in the mud. So they eat a lot of the small bugs and crustaceans, so they are a part of that cycle. So even though they're tiny, they actually do play a very big role in contributing to, you know, the control of those little crustaceans and insects and worms and such. They are only just a couple weeks old. Yeah, very tiny. So once they hatch out, we usually give them a couple weeks to start feeding and making sure they swim well and that they're very active and that they are eating little foods and things that they would find in the wild. And at that point, they are ready to go. So today we get to release them. Basically 365 days a year. I've had calls at midnight, I've had calls at 6 a.m. and they are anyone from law enforcement, animal control, other wildlife rehabilitators who have something that has come in, to the general public, as well as veterinarians, vet clinics that might receive animals that need help as well.
These are the common snappers, the little grumpies.
I was born and raised in Florida, and I have noticed a massive change in development here. And you know, we used to see so much diversity in wildlife in general, not just in reptiles, but in wildlife. And unfortunately, a lot of that has changed. And due to development and habitat fragmentation, we're seeing a lot more animals being hit by cars. There's a lot of people who move here from other states that don't even know like what a gopher tortoise is, how they should act around our waterways and be aware of like gator awareness and everything. And a lot of people are just flat out scared. Some just are annoyed. And it's very frustrating as someone who has watched these animals just like try to survive and cohabitate with people, but people don't want to cohabitate with them. So it's so frustrating, and I've noticed that change, and every year our numbers go up. And even though I'm located in Osceola County, we actually get animals from about 28 counties a year. And that's because we are very specialized in what we do, and there's very few of us who are willing to kind of like take that on. So in the state of Florida, you are not to take or try to medically help wildlife without a license. So, you know, a lot of times people will think, oh, I'm going to take this turtle and I'm going to put some plaster over top of it. It'll be fine, you know, things like that. And that's a big no-no. And it is also illegal because unless you're licensed to treat wildlife, you need to do that. And a lot of people also don't realize that even veterinarians, even though they're licensed in veterinary medicine, they are licensed for domesticated animals and pets. But that does not allow them to do wildlife. So that would be another separate license, or they would have to work with a wildlife rehabilitator to do a full, you know, for wildlife in order to treat them full term. The best thing you can do, especially if you cannot physically volunteer for a sanctuary in your area, I mean, there's all kinds of places that do stuff, whether it's birds or, you know, sea turtles, or, you know, we do reptiles, not a lot of us do that part, but, you know, there's also financial donations. There's going to Amazon wish lists and helping give supplies. There's becoming a transport volunteer. A lot of us wildlife rehabbers don't have the transport, and some of these people don't have a car, or they're a bit far off, but you know, we need to get them to someone specialized, and those transport volunteers are our lifeline to these guys. So sometimes just being someone willing to drive is also very helpful. I have fear, but I think it's just kind of like, it's more, I guess, more of a respect than a fear. It's like I understand the environment, so I know when I need to get my butt out of the way and when I'm good. So, but I think that's something that just gets learned through experience. You know, it's not something you can just tell somebody. You have to feel it and learn it. That's all hands-on. I have done a lot of research. I've talked with a lot of different veterinarians and you know, kind of coming up with the best practices. And I think that communication with people, and not just in Florida, but all over the world, and you start to really learn, you know, what are the best practices, and then sometimes you adjust those to the species in your area and what works best. So I think that's why when it comes to the research of the medical part and those components, it means a lot to me, because you know, I always want to stay with it. I don't know everything. I'll never know everything. We will always be learning how we can do better for these guys, and that's what I want to do. I want to make sure I'm always at that front line, finding out what's best and making sure everyone knows how to do it. We kind of fancy the idea of, oh, it's endangered, we're going to save the life, but when you're saving the life of those that might be more common, you have to realize at some point those that are endangered were common and then became, you know, endangered or threatened. So what we're trying to do is prevent that from happening in these other species that may not have a problem yet. So it's like, don't wait until it's too late. Let's start saving them now.
If you'd like to help or learn more about what Kim does, you can follow her online through many of the social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. She also has a website that features information about the many initiatives she's involved in. Coming up next on Animal Outtakes, a critical step in the ongoing battle to restore and protect Florida's coral reef. We visit the gene bank at Mote Marine Lab and Aquarium, where biologists shared the latest significant step to save this species.
Every animal that finds its way to Farmhouse Animal and Nature Sanctuary has a story. Some are beyond heartbreaking. But here, we focus on the future. We make sure each animal will spend the rest of their life feeling safe, loved, and protected. To help the animals at FANS, visit farmhousesanctuary.org. Learn more about becoming a volunteer and how to donate. Will you be the one who makes a difference? Donate today to help the animals who call Farmhouse home.
Over the past 50 years, more than 90% of the coral cover on Florida's coral reef has been lost. It's a sobering statistic. But there are ongoing efforts underway at Mote Marine Laboratory's International Gene Bank for Corals. The facility was created to ensure the genetic diversity of coral is preserved for current conservation and future restoration efforts. And recently, biologists say they had an incredible breakthrough. Let's take a look.
If you're looking here, all the round things that look kind of fuzzy or brown, a lot of corals aren't very colorful. So that brown color, some of them are green, but most of that brown color comes from the symbiont that lives inside of them. So when they bleach, they turn stark white. So seeing brown corals is really important and shows that the corals are happy. What we do here is we're like a Noah's Ark for coral. So we try to keep corals alive here for safekeeping. So if things continue to get worse on the reef, we have the genetics or the a population to put out back on the reef that can help sustain the reef and keep it healthy. Currently, the state of coral reefs in Florida are kind of at a crisis. We're talking about coral reefs that used to have anywhere from 50 to 80% coral coverage. So that part of the reef used to be living and vibrant, and now we're down to less than 4%. So a lot of the reef that we have left is not living coral, so our reefs are slowly degrading, and our shoreline protection, our habitat for fish is slowly eroding and going away. If we let all the corals disappear, our reefs are just going to be completely gone. So, it seems like it's a Band-Aid at the moment, but if we do nothing, the species will be gone, and it's not something we'd ever be able to get back. You look at all the zoos and aquariums around the world keeping rhinos and other animals alive, coral reefs are, only cover 1% of the ocean, but 25% of ocean's diversity is, plays a role or, is impacted by coral reefs in some way or fashion. So we're talking about a very small percentage of the ocean that, plays a major role. So losing it, could be completely detrimental on our environment. Coral is an animal. It has, a mouth, it has tentacles, it grabs food and can eat, but it also has what we call a symbiont that lives inside of it, which is a relationship that the coral has with algae pretty much. And so that algae photosynthesizes, it gets energy from the sun, and then in return for the coral protecting it, it gives those nutrients from photosynthesis to the animal. So we have 4 systems here currently, and so these are, our banks, you could say, and this is where we're keeping our corals alive. And so we have to try to replicate, the things that they would experience out in the ocean as much as possible. So a lot of what we do is, monitoring chemistry of the water. So looking at alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, and a bunch of other different elements. And as water may deteriorate over time, just because, bacteria will grow, we're trying to, remove as much nutrients as possible just to create as stable and similar as an environment to the ocean as possible. A few years ago, we got some corals from the Florida Reef Tract Rescue Project, and one of those species was Eusmelia fastigiata, which is smooth flower cup coral. That's what we call a brooder, which is kind of a weird term. We have a few different reproductive strategies that corals have, and brooders will take in sperm, self-fertilize the egg inside of them, then release what we call a competent larvae. And that larvae swims around, that's what settles on the reef. So what's really cool about this species is when that coral is ready to release the larvae are actually swimming in the tentacles. So you can see these little things swimming in the tentacles. So the first time that we saw it, we were kind of just looking at the corals, doing our normal checks, and then all of a sudden we saw these little things swimming in it, and having never seen it before, but kind of having heard that that's what they do, I was like, is this coral spawning? Like, is this happening right now? And you know, normally when we do coral spawning, we replicate seasonality. That's temperature, solar, and lunar cycles. These corals weren't experiencing that. But the cool thing is they still spawned around the normal time of year that they would. It was just after a full moon. It was in October, which is kind of part of their window. Go ahead a little bit, you know, we collect the larvae and then we settle the larvae. So this species is really hard to settle. Most places that have tried to settle this coral, you know, haven't been very successful. When we told them they spawned, they're like, good luck. And so, you know, that kind of made us want to be like, we can do it. You know, I want to be able to settle these corals. So we ended up successful. We had 500 settlers, and typically you don't expect everything to survive. Post-settlement mortality, which is just over time where those larvae settle to kind of adulthood or to a certain age, you expect to lose quite a bit. So we ended up losing roughly 90%. We still have 50 alive today, which is super cool. But 11 out of those 50 are, you know, 2 years old now, or I guess all of them are 2 years old, but 11 of 50 actually spawned, which is like crazy because they're only 2 years old. Typically, you know, you'd expect a coral that's going to spawn to be quite large. That was like the last thing we'd ever expect to see spawn, and especially for this species where, you know, it's really hard to, one, keep alive in captivity. You know, a lot of holders have had issues keeping this coral alive. Settling this coral, getting this coral to be this size and reproductive was just like, wow, this is super cool. You know, hopefully this means, you know, something good for this species, being how hard it is to keep in captivity, but there's hope for it for, you know, doing outplanting in the future and increasing the genetics and that kind of stuff for the future. The reefs are what we call functionally extinct, meaning they're still alive, but they're not going to progress or succeed in the future because they're not reproducing, they're not going to continue to grow. So us getting involved and doing the fertilization, doing the settlement, and then putting them back on the reef is hopefully what's going to keep the reefs alive until it can start doing it at that point.
For much more about the Coral Gene Bank, along with many of the other projects underway, log on to mote.org. Coming up next on Animal Outtakes, getting up close with Dash. It's time to meet a cute and clever animal. He's a sloth, and he's part of the family at the Big Cat Habitat Conservation and Education Center. The family-run nonprofit has been in Sarasota for decades, and they welcome people from all over the world, offering a chance to get up close to some of these unique animals. Clayton, we always have interesting things with you. You've got a little creature here. Oh.
Isn't he amazing?
Oh. And who is this guy?
This is Dash.
Dash the sloth.
This is Dash. He's a two-toed sloth, and he's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful addition to the family out here. And he's just a great little guy. And he also one of the amazing animals that people can come here and get to have an encounter with. And this little guy, because of his personality, is wonderful to go to schools for educational purposes. He can go to visit seniors that can't get out to visit him. So he's one of our great ambassador guys that likes to go out and do stuff.
Now, we've all heard the cute little stories about sloths. And been a lot of cartoons about sloth also. Is it really true that they just take life extra
Yeah,
quiet?
I feel like they really, they live in paradise, so they act that way. You know, they come from South America, they're in the rainforest, they're swimming in beautiful places, they're hanging in gorgeous trees, and they just take their time while doing it. But what it really is, obviously, a big part of it is the diet, right? Our nutrition kind of translate to what we're able to do, right? We eat a bunch of protein, we eat all that stuff, we can gain muscle, we can work, we can build, you know? Well, this little dude, you know, pretty much moving that slow through the trees, what does he eat? The trees, branches, leaves, that kind of stuff. Not a lot of real nutrients in it.
No spaghetti.
Right, no, yeah, there's no meatballs up there, you know. They say that every once in a while they'll grab maybe an egg out of a nest or something and get a little bit of protein like that, but I believe that's what kind of gives them that slow state of mind, you know.
He has got the most adorable face. Oh,
Right.
yes, you
Yes,
do.
he is.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
So he goes up into the trees. I mean, I know that that's where they stay. How long?
They can be up there for quite a while. They can be over a week up in the tree without hardly moving around. And then it's kind of funny, but when they go to the restroom, when it's that time, and it can be well over a week. They can go.
Wouldn't be too pleasant.
They could go 14 days without having a potty break.
Uh-huh.
And
Isn't that something?
that can be one heck of a potty break when they do it.
Yes.
So then what they have to do is they have to make this journey down the tree, down to the forest floor, which is actually the most dangerous time for them because it puts them around all the predators and they're right there where everything can get them. And then they go down to the floor and they go to the bathroom, they defecate, and then they return back up. And it's like a major journey for them, and it's like very dangerous. So that's why they do it as little as possible. A really neat little animal, really. I mean, they also have kind of their own little ecosystem because, of course, this guy is gorgeous and clean and beautiful and goes to the beauty salon once a week and has his perm and everything.
You can see this.
But in the wild, because of the not moving, covered in algae, green, don't look anything like this. There's a moth that lives in the jungle that only feeds off of that species of algae. And when they go down to the forest floor to go to the bathroom, that same moth lays its eggs with the scat, and that's where their larvae start their life. So it's this whole,
Well, it's the whole ecosystem.
right,
yeah.
all around the algae that comes out of a sloth's fur.
Now there's different types of sloth.
There are a few species of sloth, two-toed, three-toed, but the three-toed are very difficult to have in captivity because of their diet and stuff. It's kind of like a koala or something like that. You have to have like a food specific, very specific.
Now I'm counting toes. 2?
2 on the top, 3 on the bottom.
So it's got to be the 3 on the bottom to
Yeah,
help
and feel
him
those little,
climb.
feel that.
Well, I don't think I'd want him to hang on to me.
Isn't that something?
From down there.
Yeah, well, those are the same up top.
Oh, well.
So he's got a hold of me good. He's not going anywhere.
So again, I ask you, because I know that this is part of your conservation program, could an individual own a sloth if they wished?
Yes, if they did the due diligence and they took the time to get the hours and earn the license and build the facility and go through all the work, and if they had the time. You know, that's the problem where you gotta, as true animal lovers, we have to be careful by judging people that want to have them as a pet, because some of those wonderful people that have them as pets have also ended up being the facility that helped to keep a species alive because they did such a wonderful job. So you got to be careful to say no one should ever have an exotic animal as a pet. Well, that's a hard thing to say because a hamster's an exotic animal. A gecko's an exotic animal.
Yeah.
So I personally, I can't agree with that. I think that if they're wonderful people and they love animals and they're going to give them a great life, I think it's a wonderful thing. If you love and care for these animals the way they deserve, they're very intelligent. They figure that out. And they know that we come in every day, rain or shine, to be there for them. They figure out that they love us for that.
Would you say that this is an intelligent animal?
You know what? He is very clever. He knows his mom's voice. He knows my voice. He knows the certain dogs that he likes. So I would say that they are, you know, all animals are intelligent. It's the experience of a lifetime for your family to get up close and personal with an animal and to do it together where you're all laughing and happy and loving on them. It can be a life-changing experience.
For more on Dash and the many others who call Big Cat Sarasota home, look them up online at bigcathabitat.org. And we'll be right back. Animal Outtakes is produced by Dante's Den Foundation, a nonprofit group dedicated to creating the best life for dogs. If you would like to learn more about Dante's Den, donate, or volunteer, visit our website, dantesden.org. We hope you had fun and learned a thing or two along the way. And we'll be back here again next week with even more animals and some wild adventures. Until then, thanks for watching. But you said Dash can swim?
Oh yeah. They got a lot of gas sometimes, and this little fella, you know, he can.
How and why this two